Well, it's my pleasure to be able to introduce our special guest. And sorry that you moved on my screen, so I was worried we lost you for a second. And so I'm gonna introduce our guest, and I'll hand it over to Noah to just go through some Q&A as we get to hear from Angela. And so Angela has actually been part of USG for quite a while now. She actually first went on our first ever trip to Israel a few years back and helped lead that group, and is actually active as a board member now with our organization. But Angela started out as a student worker with Texas A&M men's basketball, and is actually now the athletic director at UT Dallas. I believe it's the first female Hispanic AD amongst D3. And she's super active in terms of obviously not just serving within our organization, but on different committees within the NCAA, and very, just very active throughout the NCAA. Certainly a world traveler, if you follow her at all. But then also, I guess, most importantly, I think Angela is somebody who just definitely loves the Lord above all else, and is just really committed to honoring him, no matter what that looks like, and somebody who's just always so eager and willing to serve, whether that's through mentoring and coming alongside student athletes, of course, at UT Dallas, or here within or virtually throughout USG, and different individuals that she's been connecting with. So super thankful for Angela, super excited that we'll have a chance to kind of hear from her. And so I'm going to kick it back to Noah as he kind of leads through some different questions, and then Noah's going to open it up for some Q&A as well.
Awesome, Drew. Appreciate it, brother. And Angela, appreciate you being here with us. I'm very excited to hear you share. I think it'd be really awesome just to have you start and just share kind of your career journey. I think it's always challenging to know, like, how do you get to where you are? How do you become a director of athletics? What does that look like? So if you don't mind just kind of walking us through that, maybe even some of the challenges you face and how you work through those, I think that'd be beneficial.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am so happy to be here with you. So the Lord works in mysterious ways, and you're going to see that through my story. So I grew up on the southwest side of San Antonio. It was a very, very poor area. No one in my family went to college. So going to college wasn't even something that was even a dream for me, nevertheless becoming an athletic director. So growing up, I had to really fight for the opportunity to further my education, because it wasn't something my family pursued just because they didn't know. Like Drew mentioned, I grew up in a very traditional Hispanic household where, women served, and that was, they didn't go to college. They didn't, have their own professions. And that was what my family was. And so when I had the opportunity to go to Texas A&M, that was a big deal, not just for me, but for my family. And it really changed the trajectory of my life. So when I come from a place of higher education, I really come from a place of higher education and understanding the importance of a college degree. That was really important to me. But yes, I worked for Texas A&M men's basketball, the only female in the office, and as a student worker.
Did you put Oliver down yet, or?
So I got to work with, the basketball coaches, recruiting, film breakdown, that type of student worker work. But it was in that office that I realized I wanted to make college athletics my career. I entered A&M pre-law, and as a sophomore, I was like, nope, I think I'm going to change courses and be in athletics somehow. What I didn't realize was all the different positions that are in an athletic department outside of coaching. All I knew was coaching. But then the more I dug in at A&M, the more I realized that there are other jobs out there. And so I worked for Buzz Williams, and if you follow A&M basketball now, he's the current head coach. So I worked for Buzz, and when Buzz was hired at New Orleans, he brought me on to be his GA. Now, New Orleans had just gone through Hurricane Katrina. So it really wasn't the best job in the country, but Buzz wanted to be a head coach, and the thought of getting my master's paid for was a big deal for me. Again, education. So we both go to New Orleans. Buzz lasted less than a year, but for me, I lasted 6 years in New Orleans, and I started as a GA. Then I got to be a basketball coach, and eventually an associate AD. So in 6 years, I went from GA, basketball coach, to an associate AD. Now, the unique part about New Orleans is that my head women's basketball coach became the athletic director. And that was pivotal in my career because it was the first time I saw a female athletic director. And it was the first time I looked at her and said, I could do that. I can be an athletic director. But it took seeing another female in that role to even put it in my head. And so that was a pivotal moment for me. And also realizing I didn't want to be a head coach. So I wasn't going to be a lifetime assistant coach, and I didn't want to be a head coach. So what else could I do? And administration was a natural fit. So I was in New Orleans for 6 years, and then the UT Dallas job came open. And I will say, going from 2 Division I institutions to Division III, I got a lot of feedback from different people about that move. But I had to realize what was important to me and what my values and morals and belief systems that an education system was important. And so that's what really led me back to Dallas, where my family is, back to an institution that was well supported in athletics. And so I've been at UC Dallas for 11 years, which is crazy to say out loud. But in that time, I was an assistant AD, then an associate AD, and now the director of athletics. So I have, in every step and every year, I have grown, I have learned, I have had title changes. And that's kind of what kept me on pace to becoming an athletic director. But when I determined in New Orleans that I wanted to be an AD, every decision I made from then on was to prepare me for this role. Everything I did. I didn't waste any opportunity. I didn't waste anything that came that would give me the tool set that I needed to become an athletic director. And I really took advantage of that. The NCAA has helped a lot. And if you want some tips on getting involved on the NCAA level, you don't have to be an AD to be involved in the NCAA. But those are just valuable lessons that I learned along the way that when my time came, I was ready. So Noah, does that answer that first question?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Angela. And I want to transition as well, because obviously you're a tremendous professional. You do great at what you do, but also an amazing part of your journey is you follow Christ, and that's a pivotal part of who you are as well. And so I'd love to hear, how does that play into your job? I think that's the biggest question for all of us, and why we love this community at USG is, how can you bring your faith into the workplace to be a Christ-centered leader? So share with us, how do you do that at the level that you are at right now?
Yes, I think one of the big misconceptions that you have to be at a private Christian school to live out your faith. And that's just not the case. I have only worked at public institutions, at large public institutions, and I live my faith out every day. And that's the joy of being who we are, is we can't help but love Jesus. We can't help but bring his message in everything that we do. Even now, when people ask me about the job, how's it going? My answer is, I'm living an answered prayer. I have prayed for so long for this position, and that's the truth. I am living an answered prayer. And even in just that comment, people know that I'm a believer. People know what my mission is. People know where my faith is. And so it's those little things. If you look at my desk, I do have a Bible on my desk. It's not prohibited. It's okay. But those are little things that just how you comment, how you live your life, the joy you bring in the office every day, that joy comes from somewhere. And my coach is like, Angela, why are you so happy all the time? It's like, I've got Christ in my heart. How can I not be happy? So just comments like that people understand where my heart is, where my faith is. And then it also opens the door to ask questions. And that's been the case with my student athletes. I do have a cross in my office. That those very simple gestures, if people are paying attention, will know where I am, what I believe, and who I am at my core, and why I make the decisions that I make. So it's not as hard as people think to live a Christ-centered life in higher education in that public institution. So I did want to say that.
So well said, Angela. And I do think that's often a fear, is that you can't, in those public institutions, live out your faith, but it is very possible, as you mentioned. And I do want to give you a chance as well to share about your opportunity to go to Israel back in 2019 with MOAM, back then, now obviously USG, but We'd love for you to share just what that experience did for your own faith journey and how you've taken that experience and applied it to what you do in athletics.
And there are few life-changing moments, and that will forever be one of them. And I will forever be grateful to Drew and the MOM staff for allowing me to join them on that group. I joined that tour so late, and that's a whole different story for a whole different time. But the Lord has his ways. And 2 years before that trip to Israel, I had a chance to be in Vatican City and have an audience with the Pope. So I was 5 feet away from the Pope having mass. And I remember thinking, Lord, how am I ever going to beat this moment? Am I ever going to be better than where I am right now? And I just picture the Lord saying, just give me a couple of years, Angela. I'm going to put you in Israel and literally be where I am. I'm literally walking the footsteps that I walked. And so Israel, truly, you were literally where Christ was. And, we were on a boat on the Sea of Galilee reading Mark about Jesus being on a boat in the Sea of Galilee. Like, who does that? It still blows my mind that we did those things. And getting, having a Bible study on top of Mount of Olives and floating in the Dead Sea, like all being in the Garden of Gethsemane, like these are biblical spots that you've only read about. And here we are in the presence truly of our Lord. And it was absolutely life-changing. It changed the way I read my Bible, because now when I read my Bible, I know what that place looks like. I know what's around it. I know the sounds and the smells, and it totally brought the Bible to life. So I highly encourage everyone to go to Israel, whether it's with USG or on your own. There truly is no other experience like literally walking in the footsteps of our Lord, and to go through the passion, to walk his footsteps, through the crucifixion. It's just so incredibly powerful. And there's just nothing that cements your faith more than being where he was. It was life-changing, Noah. It was life-changing, and I'm grateful. And I'm still can't believe we did it.
So awesome to hear. And it's just so encouraging, right? These mission trips and what they can do and how God can work through them. Super excited for some of you on the call to be going this summer. I'm really encouraged by that and excited to see how God's going to move. So super pumped. My last question, Angela, before we go into the audience Q&A here, what is one encouragement or application you have for these young people who are striving to be Christ-centered leaders in their own jobs and in own spaces right now?
Don't put a timeline on your journey. All right. Competition is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. Do not compare yourselves to others. And that is something that I have recently struggled with the athletic director position, because I've been ready to be an AD. I've been ready for a long time. And I had to trust the Lord's timing versus my timing. And all of my friends are becoming ADs. All the colleagues that we've grown up in this business together were becoming ADs. And here I am, not an AD. And that really tested my heart, because I was like, Lord, I've been praying this for a long time. When is it going to be my turn? And his message was, stop comparing yourself to others. Your journey is your own, and my plan for you is my plan for you and you alone. And that's a really hard lesson to learn in athletics, because we are competitors. We do want to advance at the fastest rate and be in that next position quicker. But that steals your joy. Don't do it. From someone who has gone through it. Your journey is your path, and no one knows that path. It's a path between you and the Lord. And pray on it. Continue to work towards your goals. Continue to put those tools in your tool belt that you know you're going to need for that position you want next. But don't compare yourself to others. It doesn't matter. And that's really hard.
So good, Angela. Yeah, that is very hard, and I think very applicable for all of us of, how can we walk through our journeys with gratitude? That's very well said. So I do want to open up the floor for Q&A for all of you to ask Angela any questions that you want to ask about her journey, faith, or otherwise. And then we will do breakout groups one more time for some reflection on Angela's message and the questions she's answered, and then we will close roughly around 8 o'clock. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot.
I have a question for Angela. How did you get started in the sports industry as a beginner? Because I find like with me being that I'm a graduate student at WVU, and being in Virginia in general, it's not a lot of opportunities like other states like California, Atlanta, and all of that, because we're just a college town. And I find it being a little bit challenging because I don't have those experiences yet, especially getting ready to graduate in May. So, what was your experience like?
Yeah, so my entry into college athletics was at A&M, was working in the men's basketball office. And honestly, that was a God wink because I just needed a job and they were hiring. I didn't seek out a men's basketball job. I didn't seek out a job in athletics. I just needed a job. And that's where the Lord pointed me. So don't get discouraged. My first tip, don't get discouraged. Because that's easy to get in your own head saying, I can't do this. You're a grad student. You are still young. Remember that too. For all of you who are still in college or in grad school, you're still young. So don't get discouraged. But if the school you're at doesn't have opportunities, then look to see who else can provide opportunities in sports. Because honestly, when I am looking to hire people, I'm looking for a diverse experiences. And what else have you done? Are there opportunities at the high school level? Are there opportunities at the junior college level? Are there opportunities, how creative can you get with finding opportunities around you that isn't necessarily at your own institution or college? Because those are limited positions. GAs are limited positions. And I got lucky with Buzz saying, let's do this together. But so be creative and don't pigeonhole yourself into one thing. And every opportunity that you have, every experience you have is going to be valuable and it's going to help you in the next journey. So does that answer your question? Is that helpful?
Yes. I think too, the other thing is too, because I'm also online at WVU, so I'm not physically there due to knee injury, medical issues, but I just find it a little bit difficult. Like even on Teamworks Online, I've been doing with that, but it's a lot of opportunities that has been challenging with that too, due to the fact I find now they look at more of the experience level, and with my resume, I haven't really had any of that experience level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like you're saying that you need something remote. Am I reading that correctly?
No, not remote. Like I'm able to relocate and everything. It's just
Okay.
they look for, it's like I have to find something that's sports related experience. The only thing I have right now is between customer service and ship life or whatever experience right now.
Yeah. Okay. This is Dominique, right?
Yes.
Okay, Dominic, let's connect after this call and
Okay.
we can talk through some options for you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Absolutely. That's great though. I'm glad you're thinking that way. All right, who else has questions for me?
I want Angela for you.
Hi.
When I think of D3 schools, I think of kind of, tiny private schools. UT Dallas is like a very large public institution. So just kind of what's something unique about that, or just kind of difficulties that you have being both a D3 school, but also a very large public institution?
Yeah, so we have 32,000 students. So, and we're in the middle of Dallas. So yes, typical Division III institutions are small, private, in remote areas. So it's getting dark out here, so I'm trying to put light on me. but yes, you're correct. And that does have its own level of challenges, right? We are not typical D3 school, and we don't function as one. We have the resources, we have the capacity to do more. I'm about to build a $50 million stadium on our campus. So, but that's something when you're looking at job positions, and that's why I talked about what fits your morals, your values, what you're looking for in a position. Don't look at division, because UT Dallas is way more better resourced than University of New Orleans ever was to this day. And UNO's Division I. And I promise you, I have a bigger budget than they do. So don't look at division, look at opportunities, look at ways to grow your faith, but also ways to grow your career. And to have this job at this institution, I promise you, is better than a lot of mid-major athletic director positions. So I'm glad you noticed that, Paul. I appreciate you picking up on that. But yeah, that just goes to the point of find a place that fits who you are and who's going to support you and who's resourced versus division. And especially right now with Final Four going on, it's all about D1 basketball. But unless you're outside of the Power Five, it's a very similar world. I promise. Did that answer your question, Paul?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Y'all should look at their the conference they're in, look at the enrollments, and then look at UT Dallas's. It's pretty wild.
You've done your homework. I like you already, Paul.
Angela, I'd love to hear if you could share. I know you shared about like feeling ready for this for a while. What would you say has maybe been some of the like biggest challenges that have like kind of surprised you, that you've been, okay, I wish I was maybe a little bit more prepared in this area, or this has been the biggest learning curve? Is there one thing specific, or just kind of all in all?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say the politics of higher education. When it comes to budgets, I can rock a budget. I can handle coaches. I have had personnel. I've had all those experiences. But until you're in a position like this, you don't fully understand the politics of higher education, public schools, being in Texas. Like, all of those things matter. And I wish somebody would have told me to pay more attention to those things. So I'm telling you now to pay more attention to those things as you look to grow your career in different places. If you look at the state of Texas right now, we're having a lot of DEI conversations, a lot of conversations around transgender issues, a lot of conversations around higher education. And so looking at those, did those fit, a state you want to live in? So those are things you need to pay attention to, and things that I was just naive to, even coming into this position, because it wasn't something I ever dealt with or had to deal with. And then, that small bump to the AD role, it's a small shift, but it's a large chair. And so to understand what that looks like, what it means, and what influence I have and what influence those around me have in these positions is very important to understand and learn. And so when you're going through interviews for whatever job, I would really recommend to understand who the playmakers are, who the decision makers are, who is going to make your job easier and who's going to give you strife. And those are important questions to ask. So yeah, it's a great question, Drew. And it's been an uphill climb understanding the whole political scene of it all.
I kind of have a follow-up question to that, Angela. Hi, it's T.
Hi.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Yeah, so my most of my background in sport is operations, event management, facilities, that kind of realm. But I've also always been very intrigued just to know more about the other offices. Like I'll like walk around the department and just sit down with our marketing department or compliance, which is not my cup of tea, but I know they're very important. So would you say it's been a challenge for you coming into the AD role, and coming from coaching and not really having a lot of experience in, say, marketing or communications. Have you found that difficult to kind of like delegate and manage in those realms? Because obviously you are still up here and you're overseeing all of those things. And how have you been able to kind of just take that and run with it and grow in those areas, not having the background in those departments?
So the beauty of being at New Orleans, again, going through a hurricane, is our resources were limited. So yes, we were D1, but we didn't have staffing, we didn't have resources. And so I actually had a lot of experience in those areas because we didn't have people to do them. So I know how to set up a gym for a game day. I know how to do stat crew, or I think it's called something different now, but I know how to keep stats at every sport because I've had to do it. So those are things that I didn't ask for those opportunities, but they came just because we didn't have anybody else to do them. But I would encourage or even challenge you to learn how other people do their jobs. And it is more, what you're doing is great. That's a great first step, to talk to someone and say, hey, what does your job look like? But, work a basketball game. Sit behind the person who's statting and learn how to stat a game. Or, what is the communications guy doing? What's important to him? What's the marketing? What's the content creation crew doing? Who's running your budget and how are they learning how to do that? What's their philosophy for spending money? We spend a lot of money every day. And that's also, Drew, back to your question, that's also something I learned. We spend a lot of money every day, and those are 100% my decisions. So how am I making those decisions, and why? Why am I choosing to put money here and not there? So I would encourage you and challenge you to do those jobs. Find ways to do those jobs so that you know what it feels like to be in that position. And that brings a unique perspective when you're in the interview process, because you can say, I know how to do stat crew because I've had to do it. I know how to set up a basketball gym because I've had to do it. I know how to write a story because I've had to do it. And even though you may not have had to do it, you have added that tool to your toolbox because you thought it was important to understand how an athletic department in totality runs. And that brings an entirely different perspective than someone who has just done compliance for 15 years and now wants to be an athletic director. They happen all the time, but that interview is very different, saying, oh, all I know is compliance, but here I am trying to lead the entire department, versus I have done everybody's job in this department, and that's why I can lead it and lead it really well.
Thank you.
We'll do one more question before we close.
Hey, Angela, it's Hannah.
Hi, Hannah.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Question for you is, obviously you're in a very important leadership role, and so kind of how are you able to use a leadership role in such a unique position to, one, amplify Christ, and like, have you found any challenges of ways that you're able to kind of use your position? I know you talked about being a light and just talking about Christ openly in your workplace, but what are some opportunities, if any, that you can talk about that you've been able to use, obviously a director of athletics role, to just show and glorify Christ? And then how can you kind of, how would you encourage maybe us or people that aren't director of athletics but still have important roles in our organizations to be able to do that?
Yeah, great question, Hannah. And first, you don't have to be an AD to lead, okay? If you haven't heard this yet, you can lead where you are, period. You can lead where you are. Who you are is a lot more important than the title that you hold. So understand that too. But I will share a very quick story. I know we're way behind Noah, and I'm sorry we're off time. But so in our life, or in our workplace, there's a lot of people of faith, and we get to talk about it. We get to share stories. We get to show what we learned at church that morning. But we were so in tune to each other that I had a tennis coach who was not a believer, who did not grow up with faith, but he was paying attention. And he would always ask questions. And honestly, I thought he was making fun of us, making fun of our faith, because of the questions he was asking were so juvenile and very elementary. But come to find out, he was trying to figure out what this whole faith thing was about. and who this Jesus person was that we kept talking about, and brought us so much joy. And so know that people are paying attention. Last Easter, he was baptized and joined the Catholic faith as an official member. He went through RCIA. But it took him about 8 years from the moment he started asking questions to his confirmation to get there, because he was so unsure, but he saw what we were doing every day. And so people are paying attention, especially once they know that you're a believer. They're paying attention to how you act, how you respond, how you live your life. And does that match with something that they want to do? And that's really what drew him to Christ, was how we were living our lives, how we were speaking to each other, the joy we had in our hearts. And he's like, whatever that is, I want some of that. That's incredible stuff. Give me some. So Hannah, you can lead from anywhere. You can share your faith from anywhere. But really, it's how you live your life every day. Does that match Christ? Does that bring people to you because they see him in us? And that's just a really important component. We have our bad days. This life is not easy, especially for believers. But that's why USG is so important, because we have a community that we can count on and call on when we need those moments of pick me up. But know that at the end of the day, that we serve an incredible Lord, and he is there no matter what. And that in and of itself is so powerful. And we just have to be able to live that every day and speak to it. And again, being at a public institution, it doesn't prohibit me from doing that. I can still do that every day. And the second part, Hannah, quickly to your question, is I understand being in this role, the influence that I have. I understand when I speak, I'm speaking as an athletic director. And so people tend to listen a little bit more, a little bit closely. And so I show up for our kids. If they invite me to FCA, I show up. If they invite me to Athletes in Action, I show up. I never want to not show up for them in those roles in that moment, because I want them to know that this is who I am, this is what I stand for. And if you're willing to talk about it, then I am willing to show up for you. So I think even more important than speaking in this role is showing up for them, and showing up for our coaches, and showing up for our student athletes, because I understand that my presence is powerful as an athletic director, and I don't take that for granted. I don't take that lightly.